Hi, I'm Jessica Rudnicki with Reynolds & Reynolds. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're celebrating Connected's one-year mark by reflecting on the last 12 months, the industry's response to the pandemic, and what Reynolds is doing today to prepare your dealership for continued success. Let's get connected. Greg, it's been a minute since you've been on the podcast. Welcome back to Connected, and thanks so much for taking the time to sit down and chat with me today.
No, thank you. It's super fun to be here. Thanks for the invite. I really do love it. I woke up this morning and was like ready to go. It was one of those mornings where your kids kind of look at you and they go, "Dad, calm down a little bit." So thanks again. I do appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. And for the viewers who've been with us since the inception of this podcast, you probably recognize Greg because he was our original host. So he kind of passed the baton to me in the very beginning of the podcast. And Greg, it's been a year since the first episode of Connected was released, and I think it's safe to say that a lot has changed over the last 12 months. It's probably the understatement of the year, right? But let's go back to the beginning for a minute. Talk to me about the decision to start Connected. What were the goals then, and why this sort of platform?
Sure. Well, for all of us as we go through life, right, whether it's our personal lives, our professional lives, or both of them blended together, when we're faced with challenges, we really tend to lean on our experience to decide how to respond to the situation. So when you go back to mid-March and early April of last year, so much changed so dramatically and so quickly. No one had any experience to lean on. Not once in our lives had, so a little personal, right? Not once in our lives had my wife, a lot like so many of our customers, been told, it's illegal to operate your business. It was something just unfathomable. And in many ways, at the same time, it almost felt like an attack on entrepreneurship. But at the core of entrepreneurship and really auto retailers is a desire to find a way to thrive in any situation you find yourself in. So when you're completely blind and you're going through something brand new, gathering and sharing information is absolutely critical. And we wanted to provide a platform to do just that, right? Share information and best practices as frequently and as broadly as we could. And we're grateful that we were able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, the entire world had to, shift basically like overnight. So in response to the pandemic. So I think the idea to begin a podcast where dealerships and those in the automotive industry could come and, like you said, learn best practices and tips to help them through, the uncertain times was very forward thinking. So kudos to you for putting this together. And I'm obviously very happy to be here today. Greg, the environment is a little different now, right? So lockdowns have, for the most part, been lifted. We have vaccines out there. But what are some of the repercussions of the pandemic that you're still seeing dealers struggle to overcome today?
Well, first of all, it wasn't just me that put this together. I mean, as you know, we had a monster team of people that got laser focused on this to make sure that we could make it happen. So thanks to obviously the entire team for doing it. Everybody kind of rallied together, and it was fun. But then to get to the question, there are so many things that have happened and really are continuing to happen. And one of the most visible is probably lack of inventory. Chip shortage, you hear about it all the time, every single day, multiple times a day. And most dealers that I get to talk with are doing okay with inventory. And as a retailer, frankly, when demand is higher than supply, that's generally good news for margins. But when your business is selling cars, you kind of have to have cars or you don't have a business. So continuing to find creative ways to acquire and sell inventory is top of mind for most. Another big one is how consumers are expecting to interact with dealers. And the biggest struggle here is each consumer is a little different, right? You have the spectrum of wanting to interact completely in person to wanting to interact completely online. And the reality is most consumers are somewhere in the middle, right? They want to do some of both. We actually did a recent consumer study, went out and surveyed a bunch of consumers, and a majority still prefer to test drive the car, and a majority still want to come in and negotiate and get to a final price on the car. They want to do that stuff in person. On the flip side, a lot of the time-consuming parts of the process that don't involve kind of that interpersonal communication or an interaction with the vehicle itself, like filling out a credit app, as an example. Those types of things consumers end up wanting to do, on their own time rather than in person. So some other things that are really gaining steam and that dealers are working to accommodate are things like remote signing. This is one of those things that consumers generally don't feel needs to be done in person. Some others are like online payments, especially for service work. In the same vein, in service, looking at online approvals for service work and things like that are becoming more and more the norm. So I guess, as always, there's a lot of moving pieces, but it really goes back to understanding the situation and finding ways to thrive.
Yes, and as a consumer myself, I've definitely noticed wanting less of a face-to-face interaction when I'm out shopping or, even eating at a restaurant nowadays. You can order on maybe using a QR code or on those little tablets. So I definitely understand the demand and really the need for some of these options that you mentioned. Greg, what can you tell me about what Reynolds is doing to help dealers meet some of these needs today?
Sure. I mean, we're really focused on helping dealers increase profitability by really by managing that spectrum of in-person and online consumer expectations. So no matter where the customer is, how do you get the most out of each interaction? We're focused really on helping dealers retail anywhere without sacrificing anything at all. When you think about what that means in practice, there are some things we talked about a minute ago, like remote signing and approving and paying for service work remotely. But then you have other things like working a deal remotely from a sales perspective or selling F&I products remotely, and even things like e-contracting really bleed into this conversation, right? But ultimately, all of this stuff needs to be able to be done online. It needs to be able to be done in store or a combination of the two. And honestly, the process shouldn't be different for the consumer or even the dealership, no matter how that interaction is happening. So, there's a lot of pieces, and the key is finding a way to do everything in a single system with a single unique identifier for each customer, each vehicle, and each transaction. And without that, dealers find themselves rekeying a bunch of information and jumping through hoops to try to provide a great experience for customers. But in a lot of cases, it just takes too much time, and they're missing opportunities to sell vehicles. And at a minimum, they're missing opportunities to sell F&I on the vehicles that can't get sold. So we're really focused on bringing answers to those problems and trying to help dealers solve them.
Yes, and I think you said keyword there, a single system, a single name file. I think that's so important. It sounds like, Greg, that there are a lot of really great things coming down the pipeline from Reynolds. So I want to thank you again for, setting the foundation for this podcast. It's crazy to look back at where we started with our response to the pandemic and, where we are today. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm so extremely grateful to be a part of it. So I want to give you the opportunity before we hop off today. Any final thoughts for our audience?
Just thanks to you for being a great host, and thanks to our audience for listening and watching and providing feedback, and a huge thank you to our customers for your partnership and really allowing us to be a part of this great industry. So good news all the way around, and looking forward to what's to come.
Wonderful. Thank you again for being here today.
Thanks.
It was great having Greg back on Connected to talk about where we started with the podcast and where we are today. We look forward to providing tips and best practices for your dealership as we continue to navigate this ever-changing industry. Before we hop off, just a quick reminder, you can watch or listen to past and future podcast episodes on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify by searching for the Connected Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to get notified every other Wednesday when new episodes are released. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks.